The city moved like a living heartbeat, constant, unfeeling, unstoppable. Cars streamed through the wet streets, horns echoing against glass towers, rain spilling from an overcast sky. People hurried under umbrellas, their faces blurred by the storm's reflection. No one noticed the shape that lay still against concrete, not until the traffic light turned red and silence briefly swallowed the sound of the world. He was there, in the middle of it all, a German shepherd, ribs faintly visible beneath his soaked fur, eyes half open but unfocused. Steam rose from the ground around him, mixing with the drizzle that clung to his muzzle. His body trembled once, then stilled. For a second, he almost looked like a forgotten piece of the city itself, something the world had stepped over too many times. A few people passed, glancing but not stopping. One woman hesitated, clutching her coat tighter, then looked away. A delivery driver swerved to avoid him, shouting a curse into the rain. The world kept moving. And then, one man stopped. He was young, maybe in his late 20s, drenched from head to toe. He didn't seem to think, only react. Kneeling on the soaked pavement, he pressed his palm against the dog's side. Nothing. For a horrifying second, there was no movement beneath his hand. Then, faintly, a shallow rise, a breath. Hey boy, can you hear me?" His voice trembled as he leaned closer. The shepherd's eyes flickered, unfocused but aware now. A weak sound escaped his throat, half whimper, half plea. The man looked around desperately. "Somebody call a vet, please!" No one stopped. Cars honked behind him. A few pedestrians stared but didn't intervene. Rain poured harder, running down his neck, dripping from his lashes. He took off his jacket and covered the dog, shielding him from the cold. The shepherd's breathing rasped, sharp, uneven, desperate. When he tried to lift him, the dog whimpered in pain, legs twitching but too weak to move. He froze, afraid of causing more harm, yet terrified of doing nothing. His heart pounded like thunder in his ears. A passing woman finally approached, holding her phone out. "There's an animal hospital 2 blocks down," she said softly. "I'll call ahead." The man nodded, cradling the shepherd's head in his arms. "Hang on, boy. Just hang on." The light turned green again. Traffic surged forward, horns blaring, but in that moment, none of it mattered. The city could roar and rage and rush, but time had stopped here, on this stretch of wet concrete, where a stranger knelt beside a dying dog and refused to walk away. He didn't know the dog's name, didn't know how long he'd been there or what he'd been through. But something inside him, something deep, wordless, and human, whispered the truth. He couldn't save the whole world, but he could save this one soul.
The rain hadn't let up for hours. It fell in slow, merciless sheets, turning the sidewalks into rivers and the gutters into streams. But still, the young man, Ethan, didn't move from where he knelt. His jeans were soaked, his palms numb, but all he could see was the faint movement of the shepherd's chest. The dog's fur was matted with grime and rainwater, his breathing shallow, irregular. Every few seconds his front leg twitched, a reflex, maybe, or a sign of pain. Ethan's voice broke the storm's hum. "You're okay, boy. Just breathe." He had no idea why he cared so much. He was late for work, soaked to the bone, a stranger to this broken creature, but something deep inside wouldn't let him stand up and walk away. He slid his arms beneath the shepherd, trying to lift him, and felt the tremor of weak resistance. The animal's eyes rolled open just enough to reveal a cloudy, amber gaze. That single look shattered Ethan. He couldn't leave him now, not after that. A passing cyclist slowed down, calling out through the rain, "You need help?" Ethan nodded. Within minutes, a small circle of strangers had formed. Umbrellas tilted, voices anxious. A woman named Clara offered to drive them. Together they carried the dog to her car, wrapping him in Ethan's jacket. The shepherd whimpered softly as they lifted him, his ribs rising in uneven rhythm. Ethan held his breath every time that rhythm faltered. The city lights blurred through the windshield as they sped through puddles, the rain smearing the world into silver streaks. Ethan whispered into the back seat, "Don't quit on me now, boy. Not after this." He didn't know it yet, but this night, this one act of stopping would change everything. And as the tires splashed through the final intersection, the shepherd's body jerked once violently. His head fell limp against Ethan's lap. Ethan screamed, "No! Stay with me!" The car swerved toward the curb, and the world tilted into chaos.
Between life and silence. At the clinic, chaos met them at the door. The vet techs rushed forward the moment Clara burst in, shouting, "He's not breathing!" A stretcher appeared, and the shepherd was lifted from Ethan's arms. Ethan followed, numb, his shoes leaving wet prints across the sterile floor. A vet, Dr. Morgan, pressed her ear against the dog's chest. "Weak pulse. Get me oxygen, IV fluids, now." Her voice was sharp, professional, but beneath it lay urgency. The machines hummed to life. A mask was fitted over the shepherd's muzzle. His chest rose once, twice, then stopped. "Come on, buddy. You can do this." His reflection stared back at him, pale, shaking, drenched. Dr. Morgan's hands moved with purpose, every motion a race against time. She injected adrenaline, then pressed her palms against the shepherd's ribs. Compress, breathe, compress, breathe. The seconds stretched like an eternity. Then, a sound, a faint, struggling gasp. The monitor flickered, a pulse. Dr. Morgan exhaled sharply. "He's back." Ethan collapsed into the waiting chair, hands over his face, trembling from relief and exhaustion. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and rain-soaked fur. A nurse came over, speaking softly. "He's critical, but he's fighting. You should go home and rest." Ethan shook his head. "I'm not leaving him." Hours passed. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle. Ethan sat beside the recovery cage, watching the slow rhythm of the shepherd's breathing through the glass. A name formed in his mind. Shadow. It just felt right. When the vet returned, her voice was gentler now. "If he makes it through the night, he has a chance." Ethan nodded, whispering to the sleeping dog, "Then we both wait for morning." But as midnight deepened, Shadow's breathing began to falter again.
The night that wouldn't end. Machines beeped erratically. Ethan's eyes snapped open from where he dozed in the chair. Shadow's chest had gone still. Alarms screamed through the clinic. Dr. Morgan rushed in, shouting orders. "Code red, no heartbeat!" Nurses flooded the room. Ethan stood frozen, heart pounding, helpless. "Let us work," the vet barked, and Ethan stumbled back, his hands pressed to his mouth. Through the glass, he watched them fight. Chest compressions, injections, oxygen pumps. Minutes blurred. The silence between each beep was unbearable. Then, a flicker, a weak pulse returned. Dr. Morgan dropped her shoulders, exhausted. "We've got him." Ethan stepped inside, his eyes wet. He's okay?" "For now," she said. "But he's been without proper care for weeks. Malnutrition, dehydration, internal infection. It's a miracle he's still alive." Ethan sat beside Shadow, stroking his paw. "You're not done yet, boy. You hear me?" The night dragged on in waves. Silence, breath, silence again. Each breath Shadow took felt like a fragile thread keeping him tethered to the world. As dawn approached, a single ray of light pierced through the clinic blinds, landing across Shadow's muzzle. Ethan took it as a sign, faint but real. The vet approached quietly. "He made it through the worst of it, but recovery will take weeks, maybe longer. He'll need someone to care for him."
Ethan didn't hesitate. "I will." Dr. Morgan studied him, then smiled faintly. "Then he's got a chance." But even as Shadow slept, Ethan could see the scars, not just on his body, but in his eyes. Whatever had brought him to that sidewalk had been cruel, and the road back would be even harder. Outside, the rain finally stopped. But inside, the storm hadn't yet passed.
Learning to stand again. Days turned into weeks. Ethan visited the clinic every day, bringing soft blankets, bits of food, and the quiet comfort of presence. Shadow grew stronger, though his steps were still shaky. Dr. Morgan guided Ethan through the process: medications, wound care, and gentle rehab. "He's resilient," she said one morning, "but emotionally, he's still guarded. Someone hurt him deeply." Ethan saw it too. The way Shadow flinched at sudden movement, the distant look in his eyes when doors closed. Trust wasn't something he gave freely. So Ethan learned patience. He'd sit beside Shadow's kennel, reading aloud, or just sitting in silence, letting time rebuild what pain had taken. Slowly, the dog began to lean toward his hand. Then, one day, a miracle, Shadow rested his head against Ethan's knee. That moment broke something open inside Ethan, a fragile, wordless bond. Weeks later, the vet smiled. "He's ready to go home." Home. The word felt like sunlight after too long in shadow. Ethan carried Shadow to his car, his tail wagging faintly now. The city that had once ignored him seemed softer in the morning light. People glanced as they passed, unaware they were witnessing the quiet return of a soul who'd been left to die. At home, Shadow explored cautiously, sniffing corners, trembling at sudden noises. But when Ethan sat on the floor beside him, he slowly curled up and exhaled against his chest. That night, for the first time in weeks, both of them slept without fear.
The quiet redemption. Months later, the seasons shifted. The same city that had once blurred with rain now glowed beneath warm spring light. Shadow ran through the park beside Ethan, stronger, brighter, alive. His fur gleamed golden under the sun, his gait sure and free. People stopped to watch, smiling. No one recognized the broken creature from the sidewalk that night. Ethan often thought back to that moment, the wet pavement, the trembling breath, the choice to stop. He realized that saving Shadow had, in many ways, saved him too. Life had been routine before, muted, predictable. But that night had pulled him out of his own numbness and reminded him that compassion still mattered, even when the world was rushing by. Sometimes, late at night, he'd catch Shadow staring at him, that same amber gaze, clear now, steady, and in that look was something unspoken. Thank you. Dr. Morgan once told him, most rescues aren't about luck, they're about timing, about someone choosing to care at the right second. Ethan smiled every time he remembered that, because that second had rewritten both of their stories. Now, as Shadow lay beside him, head resting on Ethan's foot, the city outside buzzed with life. Cars passed, people hurried, just as before. But somewhere in that endless motion, a small truth remained, that compassion is the only thing strong enough to stop time, and when it does, it saves more than just one life.